Well, he's wrong.
What if a male decided to transition to female? What if an NBA player decided to transition to playing in the WNBA? How elite would they be? How great would they be?
If one wanted to know, hey, what can 40 mil a year get me? This is it. And you know who he sounds like?
You know, I'm not a big fan of LeBron James, but I would go to him and I'd say, LeBron, have you ever thought of playing women's basketball? Because I would be the greatest coach in history, I believe. I'd get LeBron to transition, and I'd get 3 or 4 other people to transition, and I would be better than John Wooden. I would be the greatest basketball coach in history. Undefeated. They'd be undefeated.
The rambling, demented man who holds the presidency of the United States of America. I mean, Stephen A. is pulling out the old tricks from the Trump playbook when he ranted, 4 years ago at this point.
We got to put stuff in its proper perspective and call it like it is. And we live in a society where people got scared. They got scared to say these things. You got to stop that.
Wait a minute. You think people are afraid to speak up against trans people? This guy is rich. I mean, metaphorically and physically. Go throughout history, man. Trans people have existed, and you know what happened? Politicians suppressed them for political gain. On top of this, and I'm going to go over that in a second, we are humans, right? There's a big part of being human. Conflict happens all throughout history. No matter where you look, there is always a human hating another. As long as a trans person has existed, there has been transphobia. There has been people within society who have hated them and wanted them basically exterminated from society. How far should we go back, though? There were people we would now call trans in ancient Egypt, Imperial China, and among the Mayans. Trans people were then, as they always have been, part of the human community, wrote Kai Merkley of University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, and Nick Winters of Northwestern University. These are not brave stances. These are oppressive stances.
Guided by racist and authoritarian ideas, the Nazis abolished basic freedoms and seek to create a community which would unite all social classes and regions of Germany behind one Führer. However, not everyone belongs to this new Germany. Based on anti-homosexuality laws that precede the Nazi era, thousands of homosexual and transgender people will be arrested and thrown into concentration camps during Adolf Hitler's dictatorship.
In Nazi Germany, they started with trans people as members of the public helplessly watched. One author in 1938 wrote that it was a net positive for trans people to be placed in camps and castrated because the social mindset of trans people and their supposedly frequent criminal activity justifies draconian measures by the state. Wow, that was like 100 years ago, Stephen. Wow, how brave of you to carry this out. And then in the 70s, in Britain, April Ashley, a model and dancer, saw her marriage fail with the Honorable Arthur Corbett, a British aristocrat. Corbett sought an annulment to avoid having to pay Ashley maintenance following a divorce. That's via the conversation. After subjecting Ashley to traumatic medical examinations and questioning, Judge Roger Ormrod ruled that Ashley was male because it was impossible to change sex. And let me tell you, this was a humongous decision because the fallout was monstrous. For example, the National Insurance Commission used the Corbett ruling to consolidate a pension policy that took only sex assigned at birth into account. In addition, trans people were restricted in who they could marry and faced potential job dismissal and public shaming. I mean, dude, we can go on and on here.
You can't have a society where we're ignoring the clear unfairness of a male transitioning to female and competing against women in their sports.
You know what else really gets me about this?
How many athletes are there in the United States in NCAA schools?
510,000.
How many transgender athletes are you aware of?
Less than 10.
Less than 10
Yep.
out of 510,000?
Yep.
Charlie Baker, the head of the NCAA, testified that there are less than 10 trans athletes in the NCAA. Furthermore, there has never been a publicly out trans female in the WNBA. I mean, just think about this for a second. We don't even have to go that deep. This is the Republican mindset in a nutshell. Create a problem that doesn't exist, fearmonger, and play it up to the base.
But the weightlifting, but no, the girl gets up. I want to really, but she gets it, and drops the thing, walks off the stage crying, her mother's crying. Guy gets up. They said, have you lifted before? A little bit. And he walks up, bing. He could have gone ding, 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 ding.
And yet this all comes because the Indiana Fever's Sophie Cunningham, silent, by the way, as the White House happily uses her as a meme on their social media accounts, performs as a ring girl for the Trump-affiliated Ultimate Fighting Championship, toys with being a member of MAGA with this garb, and then she gave an interview to the four-letter network ESPN. Here's what they wrote. She'll weigh in on how to protect women's sports, she says, because she's in that world and feels qualified to speak to that world. I got a lot of negative feedback about me hating trans, and I'm like, I never once said that. I think that I am here to extend love, but I also think with that love is truth, being honest, and I want to protect young girls in a locker room or young girls in sport who shouldn't have to go against biological men. Now, is it any shock whatsoever that on the social media platform of Instagram, she would follow Turning Point USA, the white supremacist movement founded by Charlie Kirk, and now is going forward with Erica Kirk? No, of course not. Would it at all be surprising on the same platform if she followed and supported anti-trans activist Riley Gaines? No, she'd go even further with reporters.
On that same vein, in that story with ESPN, you talked about wanting to protect young girls who shouldn't have to go against biological men. Just can you expand your viewpoint on that?
I mean, I think I said what I said. I think it's kind of common sense. And I think I'll always believe in that. I think it's really important to protect children. And that's little girls who are also involved in that category. And so I stand on what I said, and I always believe that.
Oh, that's great.
First it was like, well, nobody likes women's sports and nobody wants to watch it. Or there was, abuse happening and nobody seemed to care. Now, all of a sudden, we're going to use a vulnerable group of people in the trans community to be like, oh, well, we're just protecting women's sports and we care so much about it. When the Heritage Foundation is now going to go after Title IX. So is it about reproductive rights or is it about just women's rights in general? Yes, they're going after trans people in sports and they're using this as a wedge issue because we love sports and, we don't want our little girls to be unsafe in sports. And it's like, unsafe from who? Really, what we're attacking women. We're saying, if you look like this as a woman, you can play. There's a bill in Washington happening right now that's going to require all girls, just like full stop, to go through a sex test, an invasive, examining their genitals to see if they're a woman. Let's connect these dots. It's more than just a couple of trans kids.
She'd also say this.
Do you see your advocacy on that, taking any form going forward?
I don't know. I'm not a very political person, but I do have beliefs. I have morals, and I'll always stand on those and be true to who I am. And I think people are going to take it how they want to take it, but I've never even really said anything about that. And so when it comes just to protecting young girls in sport and women in sport, I feel very strongly about that. I think that's why you have Title IX. That's why you have some of the greats in women's sports. If Title IX and women's sports weren't protected, then you wouldn't hear about any type of women in sport. And so I think in the future, it's just really important to protect.
Sophie, you want to protect women? You want to protect biological women? You had to make that very clear. Well, isn't this interesting? You adore Dana White, a man who committed acts of domestic violence on camera against his wife, striking her not once, but twice on New Year's Eve in Cabo San Lucas. But I thought we were about protecting women. Guess not. You served as the ring girl by the way, for Conor McGregor's return. The same guy who raped a woman so bad, forceps had to be used by doctors to remove a tampon. That's the dude. That's the dude that you served as a ring girl for. Oh, and then Riley Gaines, she has this former coach, Lars Jorgensen, who she even said in her book is a close friend of hers. Well, isn't that interesting? In 2019, when Riley was a sophomore, assistant coach Chip Klein, who worked under Lars, would be investigated by the Office of Institutional Equity and Equal Opportunity. Chip allegedly touched a swimmer's leg under a towel, forced a swimmer to give him a hug before entering a room, spouted sexual comments about swimmers, and compared their bodies to meat. Then Pauly of Mother Jones would print. Swimmers say Lars Jorgensen mocked teammates' weight and pressured them to lower their body fat percentage to extremes. Lars is the biggest reason that an alarming number of women's swim team suffers from eating disorders, one former swimmer wrote to UK officials. Then from The Athletic, Lars was sued by 2 former swimmers on the team that were hired as assistant coaches, alleging he raped them following a team Christmas party, and he also masturbated in their presence. Another claim? He sent texts of his erect penis and also videos of him pleasing himself, along with offensive sexual questions, sexually explicit comments about their bodies, and many other awful things. The alleged rapes, by the way, came when that person you follow and support, Riley Gaines, was on the Kentucky swim team. Jorgensen would be banned by Safe Sport, and by the way, rightfully so. And yet, quite a friend for Riley, huh?
I tried to have open dialogue. I tried to have hard dialogue with her, and it is what it is. What you vote for this election, we gonna see. But my life depends on it, and if that don't matter to you, you can't tell someone you love them and then vote against their life.
That was Natasha Cloud, a former teammate of Sophie Cunningham's with the Phoenix Mercury. And oh, did she spill tea. Now, this means, although Sophie Cunningham just will not go on the record at this point, it is apparently an out and about secret. She supports Donald John Trump. If we are all about protecting women, why support that guy? Why would one not see the hypocrisy? Rather, how can one not see this blatant hypocrisy? Like, what exactly are we doing here? In the wake of all of this, by the way, she still doesn't see it. She captioned this one on Instagram, "I said what I said," and with the Trump administration.
Self-driving cars. Sure. Sophia Cunningham in the WNBA has been attacked as a MAGA Barbie for saying it's common sense for men to not be in women's sports and locker rooms. Is the president following this story, and has he reached out to her?
I don't believe he has reached out to her. I know he is following the story. As you know, this is something the president feels strongly about as well, and the American people do too, that men should not be playing in women's sports. It's completely ludicrous that anyone could support that. It's even more ludicrous that you do have Sophia Cunningham, a female athlete herself, very accomplished in her own right, coming forth and speaking that truth, that men shouldn't play in women's sports. We want to protect women and girls, and the backlash she is receiving from Democrats and left-wing figures across the country is astonishing.
They're using her as a mascot. Linda McMahon, the head of the Department of Education, well,
the administration that you're a part of is pushing for a massive tax break for billionaires, paid for by massive cuts to health care and food assistance for everyday Americans, including to the children that you're charged with educating. You yourself and your family, as a billionaire family of wealth of about $3.2 billion, can you share with us, do you know how much you and your family will receive in tax benefit if this Republican tax proposal gets pushed through?
No.
Biggest bill being pushed by your administration for your average extremely wealthy person would give about a $4 million benefit. Your family is worth about $3.2 billion, so I imagine that you'd get millions of dollars in benefit from this tax bill. Does that make sense? Does that check out?
I don't know.
Her department would tweet this slop after Cunningham's remarks. Meanwhile, Breonna Turner of the Las Vegas Aces is the anti-Cunningham of the WNBA. For USA Today, she would write in an op-ed, and it would be titled, I'm a WNBA player. Don't use athletes like me to exclude trans women. This paragraph should really be stated and echoed throughout the halls of YouTube and many other social media platforms. Policies that single out trans women and athletes with intersex variations do not protect women's sports. They manufacture a scapegoat while the real challenges to women's sports go unaddressed. Unequal funding, limited access to training and facilities, pay disparities, male-dominated leadership, gender-based violence, and harassment across race, sex, sexual orientation, and gender identity. The piece continues, focusing on who should be allowed to call themselves a woman distracts from the structural inequities that actually limit women's opportunities. This policy also invites unequal scrutiny for women who already face heightened suspicion. Black and brown athletes and competitors from the global south will be unfairly targeted. She would conclude, do not use the names of women athletes to target, shame, or exclude trans women. Trans women are women. Women with intersex variations are women. I welcome these women and all women onto my teams. If we really want to protect the integrity of sport, let's invest in fairness, opportunity, and safety for every athlete. Let's build a future where sport belongs to everyone. Fucking men.